Seems like we're past 5 after. Are we ready to get started?
Yeah.
Sounds good. Reminder to everyone to sign into the document. Looks like we don't have any new faces today. So diving right into the agenda, revisit our 2020 roadmap.
Yeah, if there's if there's any RFCs or anything that we need to talk about, we can do that first. But I don't see anything on the agenda. So yeah, I'll go ahead. I was looking at the 2020 roadmap. I think we probably should like quarterly review it, make sure we're on track and stuff. But there's a bunch of things as you look through it that it's like, I think worth celebrating. Like we've done a lot of work over the first 3 quarters of the year and knocked out a lot of that. But there's still some big things, in particular, the Buildpack registry and the OS packages stuff. I think Buildpack registry is in good shape, and I don't think we'll have any trouble shipping that fairly soon. But I'm a little bit worried about OS packages and really stack build packs, just because it's such a big thing and it's got a lot of dependencies. And so that's kind of down to that next bullet there. I was wondering if we could like formalize the steps that need to happen in order to clear the way for the shipping the at least the first part of stack packs, and sort of like timelines. I mean, I guess I'm not as concerned about like dates, but more about like dependencies and what are the things we have to do so we don't get blocked. So yeah, Emily, I'm in particular want to hear from you on this, but I think like the very first thing is finalizing the stack Buildpacks RFC, which I said yesterday, but I want to just remind everyone that are like within like by next Wednesday, I'd really like to have this go to FCP. So I'm happy to do whatever work I need to do to the RFC itself, but the thing I can't do is review it for you. So definitely take a look and make sure you're comfortable with it. For the experimental stuff, I guess I probably need to review that RFC myself. But I feel like both the RFC and the implementation are prerequisites for, certainly for the stack build pack implementation. But not necessarily for the spec. But I was also thinking that after the RFC is complete, I'll probably start on spec changes, but I'm not sure if those are like dependent on some of the decisions in the experimental API RFC or not. Do you know, Emily?
I think it does tie in, because based on what came up in previous working group discussions and what's in the text of the RFC right now, if we're going to introduce this using experimental and or unstable features, I think the plan that Terrence and Stephen collaborated on there was to have within a given API in the spec, like unstable features section. And therefore the spec changes that you'd make for stack packs, if we wanted to use that new mechanism, would depend on how we laid that out in the RFC.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I think that also means we need to try and finalize this RFC too soon.
Can you see how close that one is? I know.
I don't really know.
I felt like we had reached a sort of consensus in conversation, but I think Terrence said yesterday it still needed to he still needed to update the text to match the conversation, right?
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'll follow up with him and make sure that it's that all the feedback is addressed and it's in a state for a next round. Is there anything else that I'm missing or not thinking about in terms of, like, I guess what I'm trying to do here is think about it such that when it comes time to like take the existing pull request and like treat it as a POC and re-implement it with the experimental API stuff on whatever changes are in lifecycle, that we don't run into any blockers that, you know, it's like, oh yeah, we didn't do that thing and now we have to do that. Yeah, I don't know. And then I guess the other part of it is like how to stick to the plan. I'm just very concerned about like falling off track because it has been a long time and I feel like there's still a bit of a long tail left.
In my mind, I feel like we need to get the RFC approved, right? We all agree that's step one. I think generally in the past, we've been comfortable parallelizing lifecycle and spec work to some degree, but in order to do that, we need a pretty high degree of confidence what exact changes are going to be in the spec, even if we don't have the wording done yet, and which API version it's going to land in, right?
Yeah, the latter part, I'm very fuzzy on. Given the work that we've done in lifecycle already, I feel really good about making the spec changes. Like we've ironed out so much.
I think this particular piece of work is like a big enough change and is complex enough that I would feel really good if we actually merge the changes to the spec before we merge the implementation to lifecycle, because I'm worried about us merging it to lifecycle and then there being a lot of rework and hangups or things that prevent us from releasing other features because it's in a limbo state. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do like having the spec out there because then if there are certain I don't know, like disagreements when you get to the point of implementation, it's like, well, this is what's in the spec. We can follow up with a spec change and a change later on, right? It gives you a target that's not so moving right now.
Yeah, I feel like the perfect middle ground, and we don't have to hold ourselves to this, but when we can get there, it's nice, is to merge the spec change to a branch, start implementation before that branch is released. So you can use the implementation to feedback on small changes if you got it wrong in the spec, and then release both of them in short succession.
Yeah, I think like along with that, and maybe that's the point where we make this call, but it's like, I would like to pick a version and block on this for that version. You know what I mean? And like, if we're not there, like we do everything we don't do other things. We do the things we need to do to unblock that release. Like we're not, I don't think we're at that point yet, but maybe when we start, like when we have a spec PR, it's time to say like, this is the version that we're going to target this spec PR against. And we're going to block certainly the API version, but also the lifecycle version at that point. Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah, that's what I would like to do. I'd like to, once we merge the RFC, create a spec issue, schedule it in a API milestone, and then just it's officially on the roadmap after that, right?
Yeah. For the spec changes, like they could easily be woven into like platform spec and Buildpacks spec. But I do worry about those getting unwieldy. Like they're already pretty big. I wondered if there was any opportunity to sort of decompose them into parts, but maybe that's a better conversation to have when like Steven and Terrence and maybe Ben are here.
It might be easier to have when we have the changes in front of us too. I just worry that none of it makes sense without all of it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, cool. Yeah, I guess, yeah, the main thing is the RFCs.
Do you want me to yell at people to re-review,
Yes.
including myself?
Or just vote. I don't care if you review it.
We can always change it later, right? If we got it wrong.
Yeah, I mean, some of that's inevitable. I mean, like we did, that happened with Buildpack Registry too, where there's like at least one more RFC that like corrects the JSON schema.
Mm-hmm. In general, I think of the spec as the source of truth too. Like the RFC is the general direction, but it's not the document of the all the details. We can change our mind on small details later.
Yeah, in some ways, I wonder if when we're doing RFCs, like, and I'm definitely guilty of this with the Stack Buildpacks one many times, but like some of the major rewrites, instead of like iterating on the branch, should have just been a new document and left the old one behind to point to later on to be like, this is wrong. Because I've talked to people, certainly on the Salesforce side, that were trying to get up to speed on Stack Packs. And they're like, oh yeah, I see this reference to this thing that doesn't exist. And you could go back and look at the commits, but there's no way to like understand why we decided against some big chunk of text that was later deleted from the proposal. But it's kind of hard to know when you just edit and when you sort of fork.
Yeah. Is there anything else on that topic you want to talk about? I think that's actually the end of our agenda.
Yeah, I don't have anything else there. I guess we can call it, unless somebody else has grievances they'd like to air or anything.
Small group, good for airing grievances. All right. No grievances.
Cool.
Talk to y'all later.
Bye.